Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the full moon in the second decan of Scorpio. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon. We are actually recording this on the full moon. A little bit of a delay with recording. Sometimes I like to, well, most of the time I like to be ahead so I can prepare you for these things. But, things being what they are, we'll just spend some time together today, break down what we might be experiencing. Experience the full moon in real time, get to see your stories. I see there's already some exciting comments in the chat. And then we'll prepare you for the week or so ahead with the astrology that's going to unfold after the full moon. So just welcoming a few friends in here today. We've got Rachel Fletcher stopping in. What's up, Rachel? Says hello from Roanoke, Virginia. Nice to see you, Rachel. Rachel says it's been an exciting full moon so far. We almost had a kitchen fire at work. Oh my gosh. Hope you're okay, Rachel, and everything's okay your way. That sounds like a lot going on. Javier is here, says, oh, damn, hope everyone's okay. Yeah, me too. Rachel says, thank you so much. Everyone's fine. Thank goodness. Good, 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 good. Well, I'm glad to hear that all the fires have been put out. Yeah, we're gonna go on a deep dive with the full moon. We're gonna talk about some malefic enclosures today. So we've got this full moon in Scorpio II. We've got the full moon square Pluto. We've got a Mars benefic enclosure, a Venus malefic enclosure. I'll explain what all that means moving forward. And we'll just try to make some sense of this world that we're living in right now. A couple announcements before I dive into it. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. I do have a spring sale that's going on. I extended the spring sale for about 3 days until Monday. It was supposed to end today. But since everything's been a little topsy-turvy, figured I would give people an extra few days if they wanted to take advantage of 20% off all of my readings and recordings through the weekend. Use the code SPRING20 when you check out on the website. Just a little spring treat. Hopefully it'll serve you well. If you need to make some sense of what's going on in the world today or in your chart or in your life, I'd be happy to help guide you with the assistance of the stars. So check that out on the website. You can also go find my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews, at Third Coast Mojo. She has a bunch of really cool stuff that is magically elected, where we're bringing the energy of the planets and the stars down into physical manifestation and material to help you kind of mitigate some of the more challenging astrology and things that may come up when you are going through this incarnated life. So check this out. Easy Life, Sun in Leo, kind of just smoothing the path ahead, I guess you could say. Easy Life is a good one. I wear that one a lot to kind of smooth things out when things are getting rough. We could all use a little bit of a road opener type of experience. And Sun in Leo, Easy Life is good for that. Venus and Pisces, Come to Me oil is a popular one on Third Coast Mojo if you're trying to attract good things into your life, whether it's love or things that you might need. Mercury in Virgo, Hermes Harvest is great for concentration and focus, for doing things that require skilled attention. And then there is other type of offerings with Saturn and Aquarius. There is a bunch of lunar materia that is really nice. I've been wearing a Venus and Taurus election called Peaceful Home recently, which is really nice, really good stuff. So go check her out, Third Coast Mojo. It can help you on your journey. Finally, we have a newsletter. If you want to subscribe to the newsletter to figure out when I'm going live and getting a notification for that, I send out one email per week usually to let you know in advance when I'm going live, and then you get an email right when I'm going live. So 2 emails a week, nothing too crazy, but it helps you understand when we're going live, what sales we're having and what offerings we're having with the channel and with the website. So sign up for that. And then if you want to support the channel, you can purchase a super chat today while I'm live, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and become a patron of the channel there, whether it's a monthly gift or a donation, or if you want to just do a one-time. It's Buy Me a Coffee does it in like $5 increments. It's like, hey, buy me a coffee, buy me a book, buy me a chocolate bar, whatever it is. Really what you're doing is you're buying me the gift of time to do this work. And I appreciate all of you who are able to contribute in that way. All right, announcements done. So full moon. I don't know, are you feeling it? I'm feeling it. I'm a Cancer sun. And a lot of the times when we are ruled by the moon, which Cancer is, these full moons, they put a little bit extra, I don't know if it's pep in your step, but it definitely makes the emotions a little bit more on the sleeve, you could say, right? So we'll try to navigate that today, or I will. And let's kind of break this down. So we've got a full moon of 11 degrees of Scorpio. Today, as I'm recording this, the moon is full. This full moon is squared Pluto. That is not the right spelling of square, so let's fix that. So we've got, sorry, I'm noticing little typos here as I'm going. Full moon is square Pluto. There we go. So we've got the full moon. The sun is at 11 degrees of Taurus. The moon is at 11 degrees of Scorpio, and Pluto is about 5 degrees of Aquarius. So it is not necessarily an applying square, but it's a full sign square. So a lot of the things we might be experiencing and talking about today have a little bit of a Pluto influence. We've been experiencing some challenges in the collective, and Pluto in Aquarius is often bringing up corruption from systems that we are part of that may be greater than us as individuals, and we've been experiencing that on some level. We also have a Venus sextile with Saturn in this lunation, and that's going to set off a number of benefic and malefic enclosures. So the Venus sextile Saturn would normally just be sort of a somewhat of a minor-ish aspect, right? But what it's going to do is it's going to set off a Mars benefic enclosure for the next 3 days, and then it's also going to place Venus in what is called a malefic enclosure. So really, enclosures are when the two planets are kind of either protecting in the benefic case or putting some hassle on the planet in the malefic case. So Mars is going to have some protection between now and the end of Monday, and Venus is going to have maybe a little bit more of a difficult time being aspected by Saturn and Mars, whereas Mars's aspects are coming from Venus and Jupiter. So Venus and Jupiter are the benefic planets. Mars and Saturn are the malefic planets. And each of those planets is going to have either an easier time or a tougher time moving forward. The Venus malefic enclosure lasts from today all the way until the 28th of May. So Venus stuff might be a little bit challenged in the month of May, and we'll talk about that. Faith is here. What's up, Faith? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, so those are sort of the bigger those are the biggest things that I'm noticing within the full moon. What we'll do today is we'll take it piece by piece. We're going to start with the sun in Taurus 2. All right, so I'm going to show you the chart. Let's bring the chart up. You can just kind of get a visual on this, right? And that will help us to see what we're experiencing here. So here is the chart of the full moon in Scorpio. You can see that we have, here's the sun at 11 degrees of Taurus. The moon is opposite at 11 degrees of Scorpio. The sun is in the domicile of Venus right here. So here is the Venusian host of the sun. And then we have Mars as the host of the moon. Oh, let's get rid of that. No, we don't want to do that. Oh, we got rid of all of them. That sucks. Like, so I love when we're drawing circles and we're just like, so there's the sun, there's the moon. Here, I was trying to do this in different colors. Here's the host of the sun, Venus, and then here is the host of the moon, Mars, okay? So Mars is providing resources for the moon, and we have Venus attempting to provide resources for the sun. Now, there is interesting types of arrangements here because both of those planets have a condition called being in aversion to the sun and the moon. In Hellenistic astrology, a lot of the way that we analyze what's going to happen here in this incarnated earthly experience is not only where the planet is moving through, okay, in this case, the sun through Taurus and the moon through Scorpio, but what is the steward or the host doing as well? In this case, the sun is moving through the house of Venus. Taurus is the house of Venus. It is sort of like its temple, its land, right? And Venus is responsible for providing all of the resources, all of the ability to carry out the mission of the planet that's moving through its temple. Now, when a planet's in aversion, It is in a blind spot. It's in a place that is not able to quote unquote witness or have an open line of communication with that planet. So right now, the sun is sort of flying blind through Taurus without being able to communicate with its host, Venus. Now, Mars is also an aversion to the moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is the house of Mars, but there is a slightly different kind of mitigating factor with Mars. It's called like engirding. And like engirding is a traditional technique that says when a planet is in one of the domiciles of the other, one of the other domiciles, I guess you could say, of the two domicile planet. I don't know if that statement makes sense, but in this case, Mars is in Aries, one of its own domiciles, and it has sort of a secret line of communication with Scorpio through that channel. So we may have a little bit more ability to carry out the desires of the moon or the significations associated with the moon than the desires and significations of the sun. But let's start with the sun, okay? Let's start with the sun. Ani is here. Welcome, Ani. Says, hello, multitasking, but in and out today. This full moon was intense. It is intense. It's been a lot going on for sure. Ani says, the moon is bubbling over, and my Scorpio moon is very unsettled with all this Aries energy, but we shall persevere. Gotta love like engirding with Mars. Aries and Scorpio sympathize with each other is how I think of it because I have this condition in my chart. Excellent, Ani. So this is an important one for you, right? You'll have to tell us how that works out practically for you in your life. I love being able to kind of make those connections with people who, you're experiencing this in real time. So yes, those are the conditions. The sun in Taurus too. Let's bring up the Taurus flashcard so you can kind of get an idea of what we're thinking about here. When I look at a full moon, or any type of lunation, I always like to look at the sun's intention first, because one of the things that you can think about with any type of lunation, the sun is radiating light. It is the source of light. It is the source of intention. The moon collects that light, right? It is in the celestial body. It actually reflects that light back to us. In the philosophical understanding of astrology in ancient times, they thought of that moon collecting the light of not just the sun, but the other planets and transmitting them to us on this physical plane. So the moon is sort of helping to bring that light into form. So the moon is associated with form. But we start with the sun because we want to know the intention that we are trying to work through with the sun in Taurus or with the sun's light. So in Taurus too, we see here a decan of Taurus, a 10-degree section of Taurus that is associated with the moon. Okay, so this is a lunar decan. So we're already very physical in this decan. It is a lunar decan in the sign of Venus, in the temple of Venus. It also has an association with the Six of Pentacle tarot card that we see here, where we show a wealthy figure who is distributing resources to people that are in need. And he's holding a scale. There's this sense of justice and balance. All of the sixes in the tarot are associated with a Kabbalistic sephira in the Kabbalistic tree of life called Tiferet. And Tiferet is a solar sephira that is in the middle of the tree. It is associated with balance, with harmonizing. And when we're trying to harmonize our physical experience in Taurus, sometimes we have to walk the fine line between work and play, being active and resting, finding the right rhythm and the right routine. With the spirit in this deck, and the Horai is associated with the seasons. So being able to think of like this as a gardener, where we show up and we do the necessary work to help the plant grow. We give it the right conditions. We give it the right amount of water. We feed it when it's hungry. We weed it when it is threatened by weeds or pests. But then we let nature take over the other part of it. We don't want to overwork it. We don't want to be so fussy that we're just pouring gallons and gallons of water on something and drowning it, or we're pruning it to the point where we prune so much that it is, it dies. So it's really learning when to stop and when to rest. And this is something that the sun is trying to infuse into a lunar body that has maybe some challenges with knowing when to say when, knowing when to stop, maybe knowing how much to give and how much to receive. There's also themes in this decan around generosity, around giving and receiving, around when do we give to others and when do we let others help us, as you can see in this card. In the story of Taurus, you could see in the first decan, we had these two figures that have fallen on hard times, and there might be worry about getting enough resources. And then we make plans to, I don't know, plow the fields, I guess you could say, which is the name of the decan in 36 Faces from Austin Coppock, the plow. In this decan, we call it a linga yoni. I believe there might be the updated version, might be seed and soil. This is where the ground has been fructified, one of the favorite words from 36 Faces, where it is fertile, it is ready to be planted, it's clear of obstacles, it's clear of rocks and weeds and old growth from the previous season, and it's ready for new seeds to be planted. So this is another kind of opportunity to plant new seeds. All right. When we get to the third decan, obviously we've planted the seeds, something has grown, but then something has gone wrong. This is the decan where we're kind of weeding out all of the things that are threatening the things that we're trying to protect, that we're trying to grow. Okay, so this is the excess of earth energy. So we have a lack, we have the balance and the right harmony between, and then we have potentially an excess. Those are sort of the narratives of the decans through the fixed signs: a lack of something, a balance and harmony of them, and then potentially dealing with excess. Okay, so let's check in with our chat here. Easy Glass is here. What's up, friend? Hope you're doing well, my friend. Thank you for joining us today on the mobile version of our broadcast. We have both a mobile version and a desktop version. Ani says, did you quote fuckified? What is that? Did I? Is that a book? Maybe I said it, but I didn't. Yeah, maybe I don't think I said that, but maybe I did in my full moon mania here today. We have the word enshittification we use quite a bit on the channel. Fuckified. I don't know, but I like that word though. I like it. Okay. So we're looking at the sun in Taurus, attempting to bring balance, harmony, attempting to balance work and play, attempting to create fruitful routines, attempting to plant new seeds in the fertile soil for the spring. And we have Venus trying to host right here. So Venus is hosting from Gemini in aversion, okay, to this sun. So here is the place. This is his flashcard associated with where Venus is in aversion. So Venus in Gemini 1, this first decan is associated with the Eight of Swords. The Eight of Swords shows a figure that is blindfolded and bound and surrounded by swords with little tributaries of water scattered around their feet. This is the decan where our attention is split in a million different directions. Today, as we were kind of full mooning around the house in the morning, my beautiful partner Tanya was kind of cleaning up a bunch of different projects that had been going on in our downstairs. We had our intentions about what we wanted to do this spring. Like we want to plant our garden, plant some trees and things like that. But there were a lot of things that came up that were like projects that were sort of foisted upon us by life. We had a neighbor that gave us some cuttings from some fruit trees that we were interested in. A neighbor was nice enough to give us an apricot tree cutting and a peach tree cutting. And but that created a whole separate project, a whole project of like, okay, now we have to get the rooting hormone. We have to figure out where we're going to put this. We need to scrape away the bark to expose the cadmium layer underneath. It's a whole other project. We had other projects that came up over time as well. So this is kind of a version of Venus saying, all right, I'm splitting your attention in a million different directions. And sometimes what that can lead to is a little bit of paralysis. So we might be feeling like there's so many things that we want to put our attention to create balance, to create new growth, to create harmony, but we just have trouble deciding and choosing. This often happens if you are slightly neurodivergent as well. Like My partner and I struggle a little bit with some challenges with ADHD. And oftentimes, the feeling that I've been getting this spring, and I'm really noticing this because one of the things I've been attempting to do is to stay below what is called the complexity ceiling, to stay below that point where you start to feel overwhelmed by trying to do too many things. This is a really kind of common thing with neurodivergent type of people. But what I'm noticing is that you try to make a new system, right? Let's say you're trying to organize your house, you're trying to organize your to-do list, you're trying to make a new system, you're trying to go uh, chronologically through the task steps. And then when life throws you that curveball, it throws you an extra project, it throws you something shiny and interesting over here, it throws you a setback as well. It can feel like the train is you're going down the track. Let's use this metaphor of the train. Everything's going smoothly, and then something derails a little bit, or there's an obstacle, and the train sort of derails, and then all of the things that are following behind it start to stack up in this big like train crash type of thing. That's what it feels like to me oftentimes is I'm going along smoothly and then life throws you a curveball and then everything just starts to build up. You feel overwhelmed and then it feels like nothing gets done. That to me might be the feeling that we're getting with Venus in Gemini 1, especially as Venus goes out of bounds and in malefic enclosure. Venus is going to be out of bounds on the 4th. This is on Monday, the 4th. Venus is going to be out of bounds from Monday, the 4th until uh, June the 7th. Okay, so this is something that Venus is having kind of a double challenge. Not only is it going to be enclosed by the two malefic planets, Mars and Saturn, but it's also going to be acting outside of its normally socially acceptable way. We might be attracted to things that we aren't normally attracted to. We might be like, you think of it like this. You go to, I like to ship, I like to shop. I don't know, like almost said I like to shit. I like to shit at the thrift store. It was like shop and thrift store mashed up together. Sorry, we'll get through it today. I like to shop at thrift stores. I like to, reuse, and not necessarily add to the garbage stream of like fast fashion and things like that. But every once in a while you'll go to a thrift store and because things are just there and there's not like a million sizes, right? You kind of have to be like, do I like this material? Does it fit me? And you have to answer all these questions. Let's say you go when Venus is out of bounds in malefic enclosure. You'll go to the thrift store and you'll try something on and it's like way different than you would normally wear. Maybe it's really big, but you like the material. Maybe it's a color that you're like, I want to try to wear neon yellow now. And you never wear that type of color. And you're like, yeah, I'll try it. And then when you get it back home and maybe you wear it for a little bit, but once Venus goes back in bounds, you're like, what the hell was I thinking? This thing is enormous. I look like a traffic cone. I've got this like large neon yellow thing that doesn't fit me or it's not in alignment with what I would normally wear. That's kind of experiences I've seen with Venus out of bounds. So that's something to keep in mind is the types of things that we desire, that we find beautiful might be a little bit different than what we normally would be attracted to. And we have to be careful not to make too much of a commitment to it while that condition is in place, because when things turn quote unquote back to normal, we might be a little bit like, oh, what was I thinking? Conversely, there is an opportunity to do things in ways you might normally not that could help you think outside the box. There's a lot of artists that have Venus out of bounds, right? Bjork is an example that comes to mind. The first always example that comes to mind where then she doesn't really care what other people think of her art. Like she's just kind of marching to the beat of her own drum and she's created some really incredible art doing that. Ani says, worth the train metaphors. Sounds like Hormuz Strait and the manufacturer's energy crisis. Internationally derailed. Yeah, I mean, so we see this not only in our own personal lives, but in the collective as well. Like things kind of getting backed up, not getting a lot of distractions happening that are taking away from the really important things that we're dealing with. I sort of tried to promise myself I wouldn't get too down the political rabbit holes today. So I'm going to try not to get too far down those today. But we had a lot of we had a lot of stuff happening. We had an assassination attempt with at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We've got all the continuing things with the war in Iran. We had a voting rights, a very important voting rights act challenge in the Supreme Court that took away and dismantled some of the very important parts of the Voting Rights Act, I believe, of the mid-60s, that helped create situations that were more fair for people of color. And a lot of those things are being dismantled. A lot of the gerrymandering maps that were deemed to be illegal are now kind of being allowed to go through again. That's really challenging. That's something that I think people should get. If you are getting upset about something, getting upset about taking away people's right to vote is something that I endorse, righteous indignation. So that's something that makes me very upset, is when our voting rights start to get eroded more and more. So all of those things we're trying to process and keep our eyes on the prize, whatever that might be and whatever that might mean to us personally. Okay, let's squash it. No problem. Yeah. Be nice to omit politics today. To be honest, I've been lost in the autocratic sauce. It's easy to do so. But we have to kind of pace ourselves with it, right? We've got a long road ahead this year, these few months. We have an election this year, which the noise is going to get louder as we get closer to the election. Like it always does when we have either presidential elections or midterm elections. The rhetoric starts to become louder and louder because the people in power generally want to intimidate people that into voting in either against their own interest or in the interest of the people in power, or not voting, right? So that's the other thing that they're doing, is they're disenfranchising voters, which is something that we should keep continuing to talk about, but we don't want to get so far down those rabbit holes that we miss the point of the astrology and what we might be trying to achieve, both personally and collectively. Okay, so Gemini 1, distractions, feeling a little bit stuck, maybe not being able to move forward the way that we want to create harmony in our life because our attention is split in so many different directions. So let's move now to the moon. So the moon is in Scorpio, and it is in the second decan of Scorpio. We'll bring up the flashcards associated with Scorpio II. The story in Scorpio, if we're going to do the similar thing that we did with Taurus, is we start off with the Five of Cups, where we see a figure that is mourning the loss of 3 cups, but there are 2 full cups behind him. This is something where we're identifying something we need to let go of. In Taurus, we are planting seeds to grow. We are planting new things to planting the seeds of consciousness. If we're thinking about this in a human way, we're planting the seeds of consciousness into something that will grow into something physical, like an idea becoming physical. Aries into Taurus, the separated consciousness from the collective finding a body. Scorpio is the opposite. Scorpio is identifying the seed of consciousness that needs to be split off from a body that is no longer serving the intention of that point of light, right? So think about when we're in the fall and the seed, its intention was to grow and to branch out into fruit. And once it's achieved that goal, the vitality recedes and it goes back to the earth. The energy, the life force separates from that plant and then makes the compost for the next cycle. So in Scorpio, that's what we're doing here. We're composting. We're letting something go. We're creating fertility by letting go of something and releasing. So in this first decan of Scorpio, we are identifying that which needs to be released, which leads to some sadness and some mourning and some grief. In the second decan, the one where the moon is full today, we are potentially revisiting something. We are revisiting a memory. We are revisiting something not so that we can permanently resurrect it, but so that we can let it go eventually, that we can squeeze all the last life force and energy and essence out of it so that we can release it in the third decan. Now, the third decan shows all of these, fantasy kind of things that we might desire. The illusion that is spoken about in Scorpio 3 is that we can keep something alive that is already lost its vitality. We can glamorize something that is already dead, right? I often compare this decan of Scorpio 3 to like a vampire type of energy, like a very gothic energy where vampires need to do more and more horrific things to keep themselves alive, because their bodies should be passing on to the next existence, whatever that is, or their spirits, whatever it might be. Now in Scorpio 2, though, this is another place of balance. It's a place between feeling lack and maybe excessive attachment, I guess you could say, in the third decan, like the identification of something that has to be released and then holding on too tightly in Scorpio 3 oftentimes. Here we are maybe experiencing some nostalgia. That is something experienced in this decan. Austin Coppock calls it mutual distillation. Sometimes we are teaming up with others to do something that we couldn't do as an individual alone or as well. I would also compare this decan to someone who is like revisiting maybe an old relationship, but not permanently resurrecting it. Think of it like maybe sometimes an ex comes into your life, but it's not for a permanent resurrection. It's to learn something from that person so that you can finally be released to find a new healthy relationship, right? It's very, very rare when you resurrect a failed relationship that it works out in the future. That's very rare. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but there's a reason oftentimes that people go their separate ways. But oftentimes when you're letting go of something, it's a process. It's not just a cold turkey, we're going to cut everything off and it's done. Sometimes you revisit it so that you can be shown that this isn't healthy anymore, right? So there's some healthy exchanges in this decan. There are some exchanges that are very unhealthy. I've also seen clients that have experienced this decan where like they have it in their 11th house or a planet in the 11th house or in the 3rd house of friendships, where sometimes people in their friend group aren't necessarily very healthy for them. They get them caught in cycles of addiction, sometimes cycles of bad habits. So this could be another full moon where we can identify where we have unhealthy attachments with other people, where we're enmeshed in a codependent relationship and we need to finally let go and separate from that so that we can move forward under our own power. So these are other things to consider with the Scorpio moon here. Let's see. Carla is here. Nice to see you, Carla, saying that they are a Sagittarius. Hopefully this is a fortunate full moon for you. Okay. The other function that we often see associated with decanic placements or other factors, I guess, not necessarily a function, but a factor. There are certain fixed stars in each decan. And in this case, the fixed star that the moon is making contact with today is called Alphecca. And Alphecca is a fixed star in a constellation associated with Ariadne. Okay, and Ariadne is a figure in Greek mythology. She was a consort of Theseus. Theseus, of course, was the young prince, I guess, who went into the labyrinth of the Minotaur and slew the beast, I guess you could say, but with the help of Ariadne, who was a princess of the land that Theseus was visiting to try to free his own people from being sacrificed to the Minotaur. And Ariadne was a princess of this land. Theseus was helped by her string to get back out of the labyrinth after he went into the center. He took her as his consort, wife, etc. But then something happened. Like he abandoned her on an island after the adventure was done, I guess. And she was rescued, though. She was rescued by the god Dionysus. So she first was married to a prince and was abandoned, but then she got to marry a god. So there was sort of an upgrade, I guess you could say. This decan, or this fixed star, is in the constellation Corona Borealis, which is called the flower crown of Ariadne. And the action of this is sometimes we are gifted with some kind of status or social status or rise in social standing or power. But then we also sometimes become aware of some kind of catch, some kind of glitch. Maybe it's a crown of thorns. Maybe in this case, Ariadne got to marry this prince, but then it suffered the indignation of abandonment. The other part of the story, though, is saying sometimes when we have faith in the process, it ends up working out in the end. If we don't get attached to the losses that we're experiencing, something better might come along. I think that's one of a theme here. Some prominent figures with an alfeca placement. I believe Princess Diana had I don't think her son was there, but I think there was I can't remember exactly the planet, but she had a prominent planet on alfeca. Grace Kelly, the Princess of Monaco. So being gifted some kind of status, but then maybe realizing that status wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And then learning how to flow with the coming and going of that status, right? So there may be something that comes to you at this full moon that seems either too good to be true. Maybe it's a gift, but it's a gift with a catch. It could also be something where the status that you had achieved is being taken away, but you need to have faith that something better can come along. Now, this faith, I think, is baked into the Scorpio archetype as well. Because in the Scorpio archetype, we have not only the scorpion and the eagle and the lizard, but we have the phoenix as another associated symbol of this sign. The ability to create new life, but through letting go and through death. It is the essence of compost. If we willingly let go of the old forms in our life, they return back to the earth to create future fertility. If we don't allow those old forms to return to the earth, they can block the new growth. I learned this as a gardener. I'm telling you, friends, you want to become a great astrologer, become a gardener, because it will teach you almost so many things about the zodiac and about the different phases of it. Think about a garden where you've allowed the old growth to continue to just stay like old leaves, old stems, old branches. Sometimes with those old leaves, if there's too much of it, I learned this the hard way, it can smother the new sprouts and the new growth that you're going to be hopefully experiencing in the spring. So you have to clear away the dead weight. You have to clear away the dead wood. Now, sometimes if you have broken them up into small enough pieces, you can return that to the soil and it will become something that is fertilizing to the soil. So the process of breaking things down into smaller digestible pieces is also, I think, a scorpionic function where we're breaking it down and coming into alignment with decay that will create future fertility. Carlos says, are you going to talk about Sagittarius today? Today we're talking full moon. So we're talking about the full moon in Taurus and in Scorpio with the sun in Taurus and the moon in Scorpio. So we're both mostly breaking that down, and then we're going to talk about kind of the unfolding of the astrology for the next few weeks. But if you're interested in getting a reading, I do have a sale going on, 20% off all these things on my website. If you want to check out spencermichaud.com, I'd be happy to work with you and break down your natal chart and talk all about Sagittarius and things of that nature. We also do have a full moon in Sagittarius coming up at the end of the month, and I'll be breaking down Sagittarius themes towards the end of the month as well. So if you tune into that, there will be a lot of breakdowns with Sagittarius there. Yeah, no worries. No worries. When we're live here, there's all sorts of different things that we could be talking about. And I always welcome questions, and I always welcome the people participating in the chat here today. So I'm just happy that you're here with us today, friend. Okay, so that's the moon in Scorpio II, conjoining the fixed star Alphecca, a gift with a catch, maybe status that is ephemeral, status that is given but then taken away, but then having faith in it moving forward. Yeah, no problem, Carla. Thanks for being here, friend. And then we're moving forward to the host of the moon in Scorpio. So we always want to talk about those guest-host relationships. We have the planet moving through a certain temple. So like the moon today is collecting the light in the decan of Scorpio II. It is collecting solar light from the sun. So there's a relationship between those two planets, but also there is a relationship with Mars. So what Mars is doing is Mars is moving through Aries. So let's bring up the decan of Aries that Mars is moving through. So here's Aries 2, second 10-degree section of Aries. It's associated with the Three of Wands, where this figure is looking out, seeing his ships being sent out of the harbor. This is actually very fascinating. Going back to what Ani was talking about earlier with the Strait of Hormuz. This looks like ships passing through a strait, this card, the Three of Wands, right? And this is part of the story that we're experiencing here today with kind of a blockage, right? Sort of a bottlenecking, I guess you could say. The energy of this decan is making royal decrees of saying, all right, I've separated from a body in the first decan of Aries. Okay, I've separated and severed from the collective, trying to figure out which new kind of territory we want to conquer. That's the language of the early 20th century tarot coming through here. I'm not saying that this is the language of what I would hope happens through this, but when we understand the language of astrology, for better or for worse, sometimes we will catch things that we wouldn't if we try to completely whitewash them for our quote unquote modern sensibilities. And I think that would be a mistake. I think that understanding the language of colonialism that comes through some of these particular decans and Aries has helped us understand the impulse of people in power that are trying to colonize and take over other countries right now and annex them. So it gives us some language to work through with that. And I think that's very important. It's not an endorsement of it, though, it's for sure. But with Mars moving through this decan, providing for the moon, again, it is an inversion. There is no open line of communication, but there's a secret line of communication called lichen girding. When the moon is in one of the other signs of the planet, right? So here is a secret line of communication between Mars and the moon. Now, the moon is attempting to merge with someone else on a very deep emotional level, but not permanently, maybe to revisit something so that you can squeeze all the essence out of it and then return that form to the earth. The motivations for that are coming from Mars. The motivations of revisiting something that you might be deeply enmeshed with, revisiting an old form to learn something from it, is so that you can move forward with your own individual goal, with your own individual decree, I guess you could say. So that to me is very fascinating, where we are motivated to examine the places where we are codependent with other people, examine where we may be too enmeshed in someone else's experience, so that we can sever that connection so that we can move forward under our own power. Okay. This has been happening in my own life, where my beautiful daughter has been, I don't know, doing adult things. She's in her early 20s now, and a lot of the ways that we were connected and that we were, I guess, dependent on one another. I don't know if it's codependent, but it was dependent on one another. We've been kind of going through and systemically kind of severing some of those ties, hopefully gently, not severing the love between us, but severing the dependence, helping, like, if you, as a parent, you have to go through these periods every once in a while where you're teaching your children to do some of these things for themselves. Like, I've been helping my daughter with some bureaucratic processes that aren't fun when you're in your early 20s, but you're learning that this is part of navigating an adult world. Rather than doing it for them, you're showing them how to do it, and then hopefully they are learning how to manage it themselves. So having to come together to be able to squeeze the last bit of essence out of it, but for the purpose of going our own way and individuating, navigating some bureaucratic processes that are maddening. I can't imagine being, well, I can imagine. I was 20 years old at one point, and I was trying to navigate being an adult, and I needed help from my parents, but I also had parents that helped me figure out how to do some of these things myself, and I'm very grateful for it. But it can be confusing and it can be challenging. It can feel like our attention's split in a lot of different directions. But it's useful if you're going through that with your own kind of family. I do think it's important to teach your kids how to navigate some of these systems while not just doing it for them. Sometimes we have to push the little fledgling out of the nest, and I feel like that's part of this. You're teaching your little birds to fly, right? But you're doing it not so that you can stay codependent with them or them or dependent on you, so that you can move to the phase of interdependence, where you have two people that are very complete within themselves, that are able to take care of themselves, that choose to interact, but you're not necessarily forced to by obligation. Does that make sense? That's a healthier relationship that you're moving forward with. And this can apply to all sorts of different types of situations. How do we become interdependent with one another rather than codependent? And I think that's going to be a big theme with this full moon as well. Rachel Fletcher says bureaucracy in all caps. Oh my God, it's insane. It's insane. I've been helping my daughter navigate some bureaucracies, and each one is more maddening than the next. So I empathize with her frustration with it, and I think that through 25 years of navigating bureaucracies myself, I've learned a few little tricks here. But I'm also realizing that even with that experience, it can be very confusing. So I can only imagine when it's something that you haven't gone through before, how frustrating it can be. So help your adult children through their bureaucratic processes if they haven't done it before. It can save everyone a lot of headaches, and also you can learn a lot from that process. Okay, so that's Mars in the liking girding position. Let's bring the chart back up. Okay, so just to kind of get an idea of this again, I'll show you where all the pieces of this. So again, we have the Sun in Taurus being hosted by Venus, Sun in Taurus too, being hosted by Venus in the first second of Gemini. Okay, our attention split in multiple directions as we try to bring balance to our life and try to balance work and play. We have the moon collecting the light of the sun, collecting the intention of trying to find balance and to start new things, but infusing it into the form of needing to revisit something, to let it go and to clear away the old stuff, the old body, so before we can grow into our individuation, I guess you could say, but with the hosted Mars in Aries. So does that make so? Our intention, balance, and growth. It's being split in a lot of different directions. We've got a lot of different facts and figures coming at us, a lot of different projects. We may have to revisit something. We may have to let go of something. We may have to temporarily unite with it on a very deep level for the specific purpose of letting it go, so that we can become independent and then become interdependent with one another. So that's kind of the language here. Two birds with strong wings. There you go. I like that. Perfect. There you go. The other challenge that we were talking about earlier is we have this lunation having a square. Whoops, we want circles. Let's do circles here. Here is the sun, here is the moon, and then here's Pluto. So when my daughter and I were navigating the bureaucracy, there were some parts of it that felt like a system problem, not an individual problem. The problem was that as the system itself was designed to be confusing, was designed to be difficult to navigate. That to me is a very kind of Aquarius type of issue. Pluto in Aquarius, showing you the corruption in the organized system itself. So if you're having some problems where there's things that are forces that are bigger than you or outside of your control, that can be spoken to by the square to Pluto. Also the thing that I was seeing another post, I believe this was by Stephanie Warner, who's been really on fire on Threads lately. Should give her a follow, and her she has a Substack that she writes really insightful articles about astrology as well. She was talking a lot about, I think, some of the technology challenges and some of the gaslighting that we're experiencing from political folks, where it feels very Aquarius when one narrative is being suppressed to only highlight another narrative. Oh, you know who it was? It was Devin. So it was Devin. It was Esoteric Butcher on here that had also sent me another reel that was speaking towards suppressing one particular narrative to only allow the light to reach one particular story. And this is something that comes to me through Joy Usher's book, A Tiny Universe, when she talks about Aquarius. We talks about Saturn's ability to cast either the truth or at least one part of the truth into darkness. Saturn was associated with darkness. One of the things that I think came into my mind when I was thinking about Pluto moving through Aquarius, yes, Pluto shows us the things that we might fear. It shows us where we might see corruption, where we have collective fears around something that needs to be transformed. So technology associated with Aquarius. But also, one of the things that really stood out to me about putting two and two together is the ability to try to control narratives, the ability to censor like things like the news and the media and things of that nature. And we've seen an enormous effort by people in power to censor and control the narrative when it comes to what is a fact and what isn't. And this came to us through, God, I'm so sick of talking about these tech oligarchs, but there was something I read about Peter Thiel this week where he is attempting to kind of create a technology, Palantir, that has surveillance capabilities, and then potentially criminalize criticism of the government or criticism of this administration or things of that nature. That's very dangerous. That is something that happens in authoritarian regimes where you are suppressing dissent before it even happens. Joy Usher in Tiny Universe talks about glass ceiling energy, where Saturn and its energy in Capricorn builds physical structures to keep people in a prison, I guess you could say. Saturn in Aquarius builds mental limitations. It's the glass ceiling that says you don't even want to try to do this because there's too many obstacles. I see this with I think that this is part of the strategy with voter suppression, not only for people of color with the gerrymandering and the pulling back of the fair redrawing of districts, but also through the legislations being passed to make it harder for women to vote. They are passing legislation where they were trying to pass legislation where you'd have to bring multiple forms of ID, and if your maiden name didn't match your married name, that would be a problem. It makes it so that there is like an attempt to discourage people from even trying before they engage with it. And that is Pluto and Aquarius to me. That is the Aquarian type of controlling power. So what is the solution to that? What is the balance to that, right? What is the balance to that? Let's look at Leo, the opposite sign, right? So if we look at the opposite sign of Leo, Leo is about asserting your will. It's about saying, no, I'm not going to be discouraged from taking action by the idea that I might not be able to even try to do something. So how do we as individuals assert our will and not get discouraged by the powers that be that are trying to suppress us by discouraging us before we even attempt to make change? Okay. So that to me is the antidote to Pluto and Aquarius, is not being discouraged by even the idea of trying to do something because it seems too hard, because the people in power have gaslit us within an inch of our life, or made legislation that makes it difficult to even attempt something. It is very important to continue to attempt to make change so that we don't descend further and further into authoritarianism, into fascism, etc. Rachel says he's trying to be Feanor here. Yes. So Rachel is part of our Silmarillion book club, and we've been starting to get into the chapters associated with the elf Feanor in the first age of Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings, for those of you who are not as up on their nerd culture like Rachel and I are. But Feanor was someone who had a lot of power, who was responsible for crafting great jewels of great power, the Cimarals, but also I believe he crafted the jewels that became the Palantirs as well, if I'm not mistaken here. Um, and really he fell from grace because he was susceptible a little bit to the jealousy that came from his siblings. Like he was there was generational trauma in that story. A lot of generational trauma we've been kind of exploring, where Feanor was an only child of his father and his mother's first marriage. His mother died in like basically after childbirth. And then his dad remarried and he had some real trouble with his siblings, and that led to a lot of conflict that led to the events in the Lord of the Rings story. He also was being manipulated by Melkor. I also would say Peter Thiel is maybe not just trying to be Feanor, he's trying to be Melkor. Okay. Melkor, also known as Morgoth. We're getting really into the nerd weeds here. Like, so if this is your thing, I apologize, but I think it's interesting. Melkor was this sort of Luciferian figure who was a very powerful, sort of angelic figure who fell from grace, but then wanted to become his own. He wanted to be creative, like Iluvatar, the one god, Eru, the one god. And he was jealous of the power of the one god's creation abilities. And he wanted to create, but he wanted his creations to worship him. He wanted to be in control of those creations like the one god Eru was, like Iluvatar was. And that set off this dark energy, this controlling energy, this like desire to control and manipulate and to create, sow seeds of chaos within this beautiful place called Valinor, which is sort of a Garden of Eden type of experience. So Melkor, aka Morgoth, is trying to turn everyone against each other. And we see this in our modern experience of the people who are jealous of creative power, that want to control our own wills to their own will. And they're sowing seeds of discontent between us as citizens so that they can consolidate power. We have Melkors and Morgoths in power right now. And what they're trying to do is seed dissent between the children of Iluvatar, between elves and men, and between people who should be getting along and working together on this beautiful land of Arda, which is the name for Earth, right? But they're trying to pit us against each other so that they can consolidate power. That's important when we're moving through this astrology, because when we realize that, when we wake up from that, we realize that when we cooperate with one another, when we help each other across political aisles, across fictitious borders, right, that are kind of made up on some level, when we help each other communally, globally, we start to consolidate our power back in the hands of the collective, back in the hands of labor, right? And this is so, it's just so beautiful to me that when we start to wake up to the fact that we are so powerful, that when we can be unmanipulatable, then all of the worry, all of the fear, all of the anxiety that we feel because we witness people as bad actors in power, we reclaim that, and then we ground ourselves in that realization. That's what you can do when you feel overwhelmed by what's happening in the collective right now. You take back your power through building community and bridges with people in your neighborhoods, people in your communities. That's how you take back your peace of mind. That's how you push back on the divisive power of the Melkors and the Morgoths of the world. So yeah, so many lessons we can learn from fantasy, from Tolkien. Tolkien, remember, this man lived through 2 world wars. He fought in the first one, and he witnessed the rise of fascism in Europe in the 30s and 40s. He infused that into these stories, whether he admits it or not. He was like, oh, these aren't allegories. They were still part of the essence of his being. And he infused warnings about the abuses of power into these stories. And that's why stories are so valuable, because they teach us about the experiences that we're having in real life, in physical reality. Javier says, I can relate with that hard. They definitely don't make it easy. Yeah, Absolutely. Rachel says, yes, and Leo encouraging of each of us to be sovereign instead of giving it over to authority. Absolutely. You know, this is, I was talking to people. I have talked to people about what their roles might be as the outer planets shift signs. Those of us that have prominent Leo angles and placements are really bristling at this quote unquote age of Aquarius. It's not really an age of Aquarius. It's a Jupiter Saturn conjunction in an air age kind of energy, and Pluto moving into Aquarius. We're bristling at the forced homogenization and the giving up of our will to people who would not have our best interests in mind. And as Pluto moves into my 7th house, like, this is me calling truth back to that power and pushing back on that power. And look at where Leo is in your chart to find out where you might have a role in asserting your will to push back on the abuses of excessive Aquarianism, excessive Aquarian censorship and homogenization. I mean, there are good parts of Aquarius, don't get me wrong. There are parts of it where we learn that we are all connected, that we are all united. But because Pluto reveals that which has fallen into corruption, it is revealing the negative parts of that sign. It is revealing the fearful parts of technology, of artificial intelligence, of the use of gaslighting and the controlling of narratives for consolidation of power amongst authoritarian elites. That's important. That's where we take back our Leo fire. Javier says, I'm always whispering to myself, I can't let them win. Always relights my fire. Yeah. And sometimes, Javier, what not letting them win is when you come face to face with a bureaucratic process that it is designed to make you confused and to make you give up, you don't fucking give up. Like, that's what I've learned with dealing with bureaucracies is if a bureaucratic process is designed to make me confused and to make me want to give up, I get angry. And I say, there's no fucking way I'm giving up. I will sit on the phone for 4 hours with this person if I have to. And I will call them back 25 times. That's the kind of energy you have to get when you're dealing with these types of things. Same thing with voting. If they make it much harder for you to go vote, you stand in that line for 4 hours so that you can assert your will and your individual voice. You go and you get that document that you need to go vote. You don't let them make you give up because you have to take an extra step. This is the Leo fight that you get in as a mitigation factor to them trying to make you give up by making the system too hard. I have no patience for that. If I get on the phone with someone who doesn't want to help me, I'm calling them back 25 times. And I'm not being a jerk about it either. When you're trying to grease the wheels of bureaucracy, you catch more flies with honey. If you're nice to that person, because they are a victim of that system as well. That's what you need to realize when you're dealing with people at like the DMV, health insurance, all of these types of experiences that are very frustrating. That person is a victim of that system as well. And you have a shared humanity with them. So yelling at them isn't going to do anything, but persistence is the key. Ben says, so perfectly said. It's good to see you here, Ben. I've been seeing you sharing some really important kind of visionary things along these lines as well. So keep on sharing that light, and hopefully we'll get through this together. Javier says, I'm going to picture all this during all the calls I don't want to make, like I'm scared of my phone taking my energy or something. It does try to do that. It tries to exhaust you. Those systems, like, you have to press like 8 different buttons to get to a human being, right? You have to, sometimes the system will hang up on you, right? Sometimes you'll get to where you want to be and then the line will go dead. That's when you say, no, I'm not giving up. I'm calling back and I'm going to do this and I'm going to be persistent until I'm connected with the services and with the resources that I need to survive. That is important. And they make it really difficult for people, especially people who are struggling with mental and physical health. I think it's really a shame that we make that system so difficult for people who are already suffering. I think it's really fucked up. And I think it's something that we need to work on as a society. We need to make it easier for folks to get in touch with the things that they need rather than more difficult. That's the revolution right there. Rachel says, and helping others to assert their right to vote if they have restrictions in being able to vote. Absolutely. That's where we utilize our sense of community. If you have someone who's struggling with navigating bureaucratic systems and you have more energy and more, I don't know, vitality, help them. I've been doing this with my daughter. I've been doing this with my neighbor. My neighbor can barely, his vision is so bad he can barely see his phone. He doesn't have the internet. I've sat with him for hours at a time navigating bureaucracies to help connect him with food resources, with like programs with the electric and the gas company so that he's not going to have his electricity and his gas shut off. You can get involved and help people to navigate those processes. I helped him with his taxes. Like those are good services that we should do for one another, especially for the vulnerable people. Ben says, amen. We would recognize how entrenched we all are. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, friend. Ani says, surveillance AI in the name of safety and efficiency, but for whom exactly? But for whom? It reminds me of those gated communities where it's like, we're trying to keep out the undesirables. Oh God. No, they're trying to protect their ill-gotten excess, right? I think, and it's the same thing for the billionaire class. It's the same thing for the gaslighting that we're getting from the potential false flag of this assassination attempt. I'm not going to go so far as to say it was a setup, although the point that my partner made to me this last week was this administration has lied so many times that we almost take it for granted that they're lying to us, and that anything that they say or do could be potentially something that is designed to confuse us or to make us question our reality and our truth. And that in itself is a problem. And that's what we should push back on. But yes, the narrative that came out of that was, I need my ballroom, right? Really what he's saying is I need my bunker so that if I continue to extract the wealth from the labor and the working class, I can go underground while everyone else is fighting each other and suffering. So that is the part we need to push back on for sure. Javier says, and confusing, very time consuming. Absolutely. This is another point that my beautiful partner made about the bureaucratic systems that we experience. Sometimes when you have more resources, one of the most valuable resources that you have is time. And when you're struggling to make a living, when you're struggling with your mental, emotional, and physical health, sometimes we're time poor. And navigating these bureaucratic systems to get the resources that we need, it drains us of our time. It drains us of our energy, and it makes us even more time deficient. So this is something like if you have more time, if you have more time resources or physical energy resources, that's why you really can be doing a good service for the people around you to help them navigate those things. Ani says a system can't support those it was never designed to protect. Say it louder for those in the back, right? We talk about the history of police in this country. The history of police in this country is actually like to help catch and contain slaves. They were slave watches, basically. So if you go back and you do your people's history of America type of research, even the systems that were designed, quote unquote, to protect us were actually designed to keep people in line and to protect the wealth of the slave class, the slave owning class. So it's when we start digging a little deeper in all of these things, we expose the underbelly, and that can be very frustrating, but it allows us to make changes. It allows us to wake up from some of those things and to start actually trying to create the communities and the beautiful relationships and interdependence, and to have our government systems be of service to the people rather than just be of service to the elites. And I am not anti-government. Let me just put it that way. I think a government is designed to be a service to the people. It is a way to organize a community. It is a way to organize our resources so we can work together on building collectively beneficial infrastructure and resources. That's what a good functioning government is designed to do. And I think that we have the opportunity to recreate and reshape that if we start to get rid of the dead wood at this Scorpio full moon, right? And he says, yeah, it's a gross abuse of bureaucracy to further minimize the low-hanging fruit. P.S. It was a total setup. I can't say one way or the other, but it smells pretty fishy. Ben says that was all designed for us to have to always question truth from fiction. Yeah, and again, that's the biggest problem, right? There's been so many of those types of events, so many of those types of setups, that any action that could be real or not, we question. And that's part of the design, is to make everyone question their reality, so that when people are doing horrific things, they're questioning if even those horrific things are real or not. And that is a real problem. It is pretty ironic. There's so many different ironies within that, though, that an event that the president didn't want to attend in the first place, that he was upset about attending, that it just happened to have this very intense, chaotic event that shut it down completely. Too many, too many T's being crossed and I's being dotted to not raise at least a few eyebrows. Javier says, I heard a funny one. They have us using paper straws and we are out of fuel while they continue to fly their jets around. Yep. I mean, that's the real issue, isn't it? We have a scarcity of resources for the collective, while the egregious abusers of those resources are continuing to abuse at a level that is way beyond just our small individual choices. And that's true of corporate America as well. Like, for example, with pollution, like everyone's like, recycle, stop littering. Those things are important. Don't get me wrong, do them. But the biggest polluters are on a huge corporate level. That's why it needs to be changed on a systemic level, where that is disincentivized. The system right now is incentivizing these types of ethical lapses. That's why we need a new system to incentivize people to cooperate with one another and to help one another, rather than incentivizing the type of competition that encourages people to hoard wealth and to oppress vulnerable people. Javier says, building a robot war on Mars. Yeah, another distraction. Rachel says, yes, the Pinkerton group. Gross. Yeah. Tell me more about that. That's a new term. I haven't heard of that group yet. I'm sure it's horrible, but tell me what it's all about. Ani says, Neptune, Mars, and Saturn and Mercury in action, approaching a Scorpio full moon. Obfuscate with impossible aggravation and chronic lies. I just don't even know if this administration is capable of telling the truth anymore. They will every once in a while leak their intentions, like accidentally. But yeah, it's one lie after another. So it is, I think, natural to question everything they say and do, because we've just been burned so many times in the past. And it shouldn't have to be like that. We should be able to reestablish trust with people that we have chosen to lead us, right? We should be able to choose ethical leaders, and we should be able to trust that they have our interests in mind as servants, as public servants of the, listen to those two words, public servants, serving the public, not serving themselves, through Polymarket or I don't know, betting on policy, creating wars, and then backtracking so that their family members can get rich. That's corruption. That's the essence of corruption. So how can we get back to having trust in our public servants? How can we get back to having servants that are actually serving the public rather than their own self-interest? I think a lot of it will start if we take Citizens United back. If you're not familiar with that, go look that up. Citizens United was a Supreme Court ruling, I think in the late 90s, early 2000s, that gave corporations personhood. And it also took down the barriers for how much lobbyist and corporate money could be donated in political campaigns. That, to me, is the first step towards restoring sanity and trust in our institutions, is taking the incentivization for buying these people out of the equation. If we do that, we've got a chance. But until then, it's going to be more of the same. Javier says, my devices have also been weird since the Uranus ingress. The mainframe is melting. Yeah, Uranus. That was interesting too. That assassination attempt was happening at basically the minute that Uranus was ingressing from Taurus to Gemini, which astrologers were like, wow, that can't be that's a crazy coincidence, you know? So Rachel says, one of the groups from the 19th century that eventually became the police. Okay, good. So that is the Pinkerton group, right? Where we're talking about former groups that were trying to control emancipated slaves, and we're trying to quote unquote protect the resources of the slave owning class, eventually became the police. Ben says the only truth they share is their disdain for the very people they have sworn an oath to serve. Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. Ani says, you did not know that, Rachel. Thanks for bringing it up. Leaders need different incentives and consequences. Exactly. And this is one of the points that my guy Charles Eisenstein makes in Sacred Economics, is instead of directing our righteous indignation towards the individuals that have been incentivized to be unethical, we have to direct that towards changing the system itself. We will always have Donald Trumps, and we'll always have JD Vances and Pete Hegseths and all of these stupid fucks that are trying to completely steal all of people's tax money to enrich themselves and oppress people that they don't agree with. If we keep incentivizing money in politics and buying politicians and things of that nature, it is, if we start incentivizing doing the right thing, quote unquote, for the most amount of people, like, and he has a lot of great ideas about this. Some of these ideas come through changing the way our currency works from a debt-based society to one that is maybe a decaying currency, where hoarding wealth means that if you sit on your wealth instead of circulate it, which is what currency is supposed to do, it will actually decline in value. That encourages people to share resources and move them from one point to another, to connect people with their gifts and services. Others come from I guess a version of the stock market that's not just based on extraction, but based on preservation, right? Preservation of resources on this planet. There's all sorts of really cool ideas out there that could work. And we're going to have to figure it out, because this one isn't this. We're rapidly spiraling towards extinction with this way of doing things. Rachel says, you're very welcome. This is why community information sharing opportunities like this are so valuable. I love it. I love that we can kind of put our heads together and co-create these experiences here. 100% the reason why I do it this way. Ani says, the $1 million question is how to motivate and incentivize for the benefit of masses and how to redistribute power and wealth. We promote sociopathy inadvertently by being passive and complicit. I agree. I think a lot of what we're uncovering today is that people are really exhausted, though, too. That the system has become so dysfunctional that trying to navigate it and be ethical within it becomes its own exhausting type of thing, right? And it's easy to become passive and complicit when we become distracted by the bread and circuses, right? And I'm not immune to this by any stretch of the imagination, by all the crap on our phones, by the video games, the sports, the whatever it is, our distraction of choice. I'm actually more susceptible to it than I should be. And it's been a real effort at times to turn some of those things off or turn the noise down on them so I can focus on the things that are really important, like these conversations that we're having today. Ani says, we end up participating, building our own collective prison while we give sovereignty away for what's easy and safe. Convenience, right? Convenience is something that we've become overly attached to. Sometimes we have to do things the hard way. Sometimes we have to delay gratification. And that's really important. This is an argument against using AI, right? Learning about process versus just results. Sometimes the end does not justify the means. This is something that is a really important value on this channel here. I've almost never been an end justifies the means type of person. I've always been process orientated. And right now we have people that are very, very, very attached to their ends, and they don't care what means gets them there. And that to me, we have to push back against. Ani says, yeah, we are worn down. I'm tired too. This oppression is intention, and it makes me mad too. Intentional. Absolutely. All right. Well, we vented. We got our full moon vent out there. We got our late stage capitalism frustrations, our gaslighting frustrations from systemic failures. Hopefully it was cathartic for you. Let's do this now, friends. Let's take that energy and let's look at how this is going to unfold. All right. So I'm going to put the On the outer chart here, I know it's not that easy to see, but at least you'll get some kind of reference for it. I'm going to put how this is going to unfold over time. So what we have now is moving into the unfolding of this chart. We have the full moon giving way to the enclosures of both Mars and Venus. So here is Mars in benefic enclosure. This is happening. It has happened. I don't know if you sense the shift of tone in the broadcast today, but Venus was not in malefic enclosure when we started, where we were like, let's not go down the political rabbit hole. Let's not get angry. And then once Venus went into malefic enclosure, it was like, nah, screw that. We need to vent our frustrations. We're feeling the pressure of Mars and Saturn to have some righteous indignation about it, right? Selena, what's up? Selena says, hi, may I have a full moon in Scorpio reading, please? Well, you're getting it right now in real time. We've been talking about the energy of the full moon in Scorpio. If you just joined us, Selena, or Salama, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Go back to the beginning of the broadcast or hit the replay, because we talked about all of the factors around the full moon in Scorpio. And I guess if you want to share what your rising sign is, I can give you a little bit of where this might be affecting you. But we're kind of going down the full moon. We have moved in between macrocosm and microcosm today, and we just spent a few minutes on the macrocosm, which I think is important. And then we'll kind of come back to the micro here. Ani says, hi, Salam. Spence isn't offering readings today, but email him for an appointment. That's good advice too. There's a sale right now off of my readings until Monday, 20% off if you'd like me to read your chart for you. Okay, so Mars in benefic enclosure, the 1st through the 4th. Here is what we're talking about when we're doing benefic enclosure. So here's Mars, and what we're looking at is we have Venus making its aspect on one side of Mars and Jupiter making its aspect on the other side of Mars. Okay. I see some funny comments in the chat here. So Venus and Jupiter enclosing Mars for the next 3 days. This happens right as Venus makes a sextile with Saturn. So there's no planet that's breaking up the benefic enclosure. There are 2 ways that this could go. The Mars could help us to individuate with support from Venus and support from Jupiter. It could also allow people to get away with some martial things, which sometimes can be experienced objectively negative, or subjectively negative, I should say. We've seen this in some political figures as well, who, like, I believe Donald Trump's Saturn is benefically enclosed by Jupiter and Venus. So there is that kind of statement he's made, is I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. That's also a possibility for a malefic that is benefically enclosed. So watch out this weekend for 2 things. You may have some extra support for going your own way, for severing and separating. You may also see people maybe getting away with something that they shouldn't get away with. And we have to work through our feelings of, hey, that's not fair. Hey, I don't want to let someone get away with this type of thing. I guess you only have to be patient because it ends on Monday the 4th. So be careful about abusing your individual will or being a victim of someone else doing the same. And but also there may be some opportunities for going your own way without it hurting other people. I think that's another way to look at it as well. Now, the Venus enclosure is a malefic enclosure. So here's Venus. And now we see Mars making its aspect on this side, on the 17-degree ray side of Venus, and Mars making its ray at 9 degrees on the other side of Venus. So those 2 rays are enclosing Venus. Now it's via a sextile, so it could be worse, But those two planets are in the overcoming sextile. The desire to go our own way, or not only the desire with Mars to go our own way, but the necessity to make a new start from Saturn, the binding to making a new start, the pressure to make a new start from Saturn is putting pressure on our ability to see things from multiple perspectives. I think that this malefic enclosure of Venus is going to make it difficult for us to reconcile multiple viewpoints because of the pressure for us to either take a stand on something we believe in or to take action for our own self-interest because we're being forced to, okay? And that can make it difficult to say, yeah, I see your perspective. Oh, I see your side of things. Oh, let's harmonize our two different perspectives. That is something that I attempted to do quite passionately as a Venus and Gemini second decan native, was see people's perspectives and see if we could harmonize it and meet in the middle or something of that nature. Lately, that's become much more difficult because there are some things happening in the collective where I don't necessarily think that there is value in some of those other fascist perspectives. And I'm having a lot more difficulty with both sides isms, right? And I think that the collective might be having difficulty with that too. Like when I see people stripping people's voting rights, that makes me unequivocally upset because there is idealistically, a system that allows people to make their vote and to have their voice. And this makes me angry, not only for myself and my own political views, but for anyone that has the desire to vote on what they believe in. That to me is a collective problem, right? And that's an example of something that I can't see both sides of that argument. There is no both sides to that argument. Taking away people's voting rights is unequivocally evil and unequivocally a problem for everyone that is wanting to assert their own opinion on how our political process should work. The only people that benefit from that are the very tiny handful of elites that want to maintain power. That's a problem, okay? That feels like the malefic enclosure of Venus, where we cannot reconcile the ambiguity of that. There is a lack of ambiguity. That is something that is, in my opinion, unequivocally wrong. Now, I don't even know what else to say about that. There may be situations that we are faced with in May from, I have the wrong thing on here. Let's talk about this. So this is from May 1st to May 28th. Well, we may be faced with ethical quandaries. Gemini is a sign that brings us face to face with moral choices, with saying, I got to weigh both sides of this. I need to collect information and then potentially make a choice towards the end of the sign and saying, I have to release this, and this is what I believe in. It's going to be hard to do that, I think, the collecting of both sides and information with Venus and malefic enclosure in Gemini, because I do think that there's going to be some actions that are so like extreme that we aren't going to be able to have that wiggle room that is normally necessary for Venus and Gemini to allow for gray area. This to me is that there are situations that are going to be really in high contrast in May, where there is a right way to go and there's a wrong way to go. And people may disagree on what that is, but people are going to be very passionate about their individual subjective opinion and perspective. And there might not be ways to bridge that gap. That being said, if you know that, I think it is important to make an extra effort to make sure that what you're getting fired up and passionate about is rooted in collective benefit, service, and not necessarily in defense of a selfish motivation. That's, to me, is the way to navigate a malefic enclosure from two Aries planets to Venus and Gemini, making sure that what you're getting upset about has communal benefit rather than just you're upset that some individual thing is happening that you can't see the other person's perspective. You could get yourself in a lot of trouble if you're getting so far down the individualistic desire rabbit hole that you can't see someone else's rights, or you can't see someone else's right to be. So that's a Venus and malefic enclosure. Mercury moves into Taurus, all right, on the 2nd. Okay, so here's Mercury in Taurus. I would also say that we've got the first aspect of this lunation after it is released from the bond is on Sunday. This is the 3rd. On Sunday at about 9 p.m., where the moon makes a trine with Saturn. So that's the first aspect that this lunation makes. And that's often tells us how things might play out. Sagittarius 1 moon, we might be very passionately sharing our vision. And it may be trining with our need to reject that which we are not. We've done that. We've demonstrated that aspect, I think, pretty well here today. We have been very passionate about our personal perspective on the challenges we face as a collective. And we have very passionately rejected that which we see or that we feel is not in service of our collective needs and desires. Doesn't mean that we're 100% right with everything all the time. It just means that that is the energy of the moon trining Saturn from Sagittarius 1 to Aries 1. A passionate plea to reject that which is not serving our communities. Mercury in Taurus, okay. It says, yay, Mercury in Taurus native, Javier says. Mercury in Taurus changes the way that we communicate. It changes the questions that we're asking, right? As I'm recording this today, Mercury's in Aries 3. Mercury in Aries 3 will communicate in a way that maybe uses humor or charisma to convince people of a perspective. You've heard this in my communication style today, where I've given a passionate plea for, I don't know, a return to sanity for collective governance, right? I've tried to convince you of my perspective, my subjective perspective, the way I see it. When Mercury moves into Taurus, Mercury will start to maybe slow down. Its communication style will start to slow down. It might be less about an impassioned plea for agreement, and it might be more towards asking questions about our resources. It might be more so moving towards, especially in the first decan, taking stock of what we have and what we need and making plans to either get what we don't have or to share what we do or to plant seeds to proliferate our abundance. It's a great time for taking stock of your seeds that you want to plant in your garden, right? This is what Tanya's been doing a little bit, and I think it's going to kick into overdrive this weekend when Mercury moves into Taurus, because we will have cleared the decks to be able to say, well, here's all the seeds we have. Here's what we want to grow. Here's how we want to increase our abundance, right? Through planting seeds and through, I don't know, we're going to do, I think, some container gardening this year. I've released my expectation of having like 4 giant raised beds finished and planted. I have had some really good advice lately of staying below my complexity ceiling, where it's like, I need to take one step at a time. I need to the step that is a problem right now is we have too much asphalt in our backyard, and I want to remove some of the asphalt. So this year, the project is get the asphalt gone, get the bed built, figure out how to plant it next year, okay? And we may have to make choices like that moving forward, where you may have something that you want to achieve, but there may be 3 or 4 steps before it that may not be achievable to complete the entire project in one season. This is another thing that gardening teaches you, is that you don't have to have everything completed in one season. Sometimes when you're building the land back up, like Tanya and I are not just building food for ourselves. We're building native habitat for pollinators. We're building food forests for animals in our community, for birds, for insects, for butterflies. When you're building that, it is a long-term project, and you can do it piece by piece. This year, what part of our big project was planting more fruit trees. We planted a number of fruit trees last year. This year, we planted some American plums, some native wild black cherry trees, and some redbud trees. And that took a lot of work, and we had to dig the holes, and we had to make the cages to protect them so that they wouldn't get browsed by rabbits. And I want to share with the rabbits, but those trees need to get established first. The rabbits have destroyed too many small saplings in the very beginning. But I digress. One step at a time is the point. And Mercury in Taurus is going to help us slow down our thinking and ask questions about resources versus impassioned individual opinions and perspectives. Mars squares Jupiter on the 4th, on Monday, and Venus goes out of bounds. The Mars-Jupiter square ends the benefic enclosure of Venus. Okay, so if we go forward to Monday here, you can see now that Venus is, well, hold on a second. So let me show you how this works. I have to think about this for a second. So here's Venus. We have the aspect that Venus was making to Mars on one side, and the aspect that Jupiter was making on the other. Once Mars makes the square to Jupiter, it is outside of the protection of Venus. Does that make sense? So once Mars starts to move forward, it's not going to get the protection from Venus and Jupiter. Okay, it's outside of that range where the protected zone was. Simultaneously, Venus goes out of bounds. I think we talked about this a little bit in the beginning of the broadcast today, but Venus out of bounds is like it's a maverick. It's like where our tastes change. We might be communicating with a lot of different people, or try to communicate with people that are very different than we would normally communicate with Venus and Gemini. We still have the malefic enclosure, so we may be attempting to harmonize with people through our communication, but our individual desires and needs are maybe taking precedent over it, and it might be very hard to come to consensus. I think throughout May, it's going to be a lot of just rhetoric that's going to be thrown around in the collective, where the powers that be that are trying to create distractions and trying to consolidate power are going to raise the volume on their attempts to make people too afraid or too exhausted to ask the right questions and to take action. So that's where we need to pace ourselves, right? When we have all these Aries things going on, we need to learn to slow down and pace ourselves, and sometimes take a break every once in a while so we can recharge our batteries, so that we're not so exhausted that we can actually do things when it is needed. Mercury is going to square Pluto on the 5th. Okay, so here's Mercury at 5 degrees of Taurus, squaring Pluto at 5 degrees of Aquarius. And it is also a time when Uranus is going under the beams of the sun. So this is, you can see that Uranus is at 0 degrees of Gemini, while the Mercury and Pluto square is taking place. It's a little bit of a controversial technique. I don't think it's that controversial, but it is a mixing of modern astrological technique and Hellenistic or traditional astrological technique. Because Uranus is not technically a visible planet, utilizing whether the planet is going under the beams with visibility, it's a little experimental. It's worth, I think, thinking about, though, because we have a Uranus cazimi, a conjunction with the sun coming. And I have a feeling that this is the point when Uranus is going under the beams, where we're getting a preview of the challenges that we're going to see moving forward throughout the Uranus cycle. The seed's going to be planted at the cazimi of Uranus, and that's happening later in May, okay? Later in May. But this is going to be the first, like, maybe a breakdown of the problem. We have a lot of things going on around technology, a lot of conversations about monopolization of tech power, of communications industries like Warner Brothers and Netflix and Paramount, all those conversations. If you don't follow this person, I highly recommend following a guy named Matt Stoller, who wrote an excellent book about monopolies in America. And he has a newsletter, Matt Stoller's, I believe it's something, the big tech or something like that newsletter. I get it every other day, I think. And it talks a lot about the history of monopolized corporate power in America and how people are voting, what to do as community members to start to push back on that type of thing. Very intelligent person. It sort of takes as much of a bipartisan viewpoint of it as well, if that is something that is important to you as well. Because I think that the anti-monopoly movement has supporters in both the left and the right, if they are truly students of American history. All right. Javier says, oh, because it's not a traditional planet. Is that what you're saying? Yes. With Uranus, the distinction between Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune and the 7 traditional quote unquote visible planets is those planets, those modern planets, were discovered, quote unquote, much later in the process. And they were only discovered after we had like telescopic technology or things like that, because we couldn't see them with the naked eye. So that's why we call the other planets the visible planets, and these outer planets sort of like, I don't know if they're invisible, but we only can see them really with a telescope. So these techniques where we're talking about a planet going in and out of visibility with the sun are somewhat controversial, I guess, if you're a traditional astrologer. But I like to experiment with blending some of those techniques sometimes. I think it is at least worthwhile to see if there are significations that come through a phasis moment of Uranus going under the beams and the Cazimi moment. Something to at least research. So the Mercury-Pluto square happening the same time Uranus is going under the beams, a lot of times we'll see multiple things happening, like multiple testimonies, I guess you could say. The Mercury-Pluto square, I'm just making that sound because it's, to me, it's the revelation of more corruption. To me, this is a fear coming of scarcity. I think the beginning of this next week, there's going to be a lot of conversations about affordability. I think that the 2 to 3 week delay on the resources, that the resource squeeze that we've seen from like places like the Strait of Hormuz closing, and countries that have been immediately affected by it have seen the pinch, like at the pump or whatever. I think that whole concept is kind of stupid anyway. Gas should not be cheap. Like, gas should be expensive. It's destroying the planet, and the externalization of costs with cheap gasoline is a planet that can no longer sustain life. So my personal opinion on it is that, yeah, gas should be $1 million. Like, we should make it really expensive, and it should be taxed within an inch of its life, because we need to figure out different ways to utilize transportation in this world that don't accelerate the unsustainability of our habitat. But for the less idealistic of us that are trying to just get to their jobs, which I totally appreciate and admit that I am very idealistic about these things, the pinch might be starting to be felt in America because of a little bit of a delay in North American experience of this, rather than like the immediate hit that a place like South Korea was experiencing. They were already rationing fuel because they were feeling their direct supply lines were directly affected when this war started in Iran. So they have days, one day of business week where you're not allowed to drive. You can only drive 4 out of 5 business days there. I've also seen pumps starting to shut off at like $75 or something, which should be enough fuel, but there's some like soft rationing starting with fuels. I think more of that is going to happen in the beginning of this week as Mercury moves into Taurus, and it's moving through a decan where people are worried about scarcity. And they're worried about scarcity because of the large scale issues that are happening in the community and in the collective. Javier says, gotcha. I think it's worth it too. And Javier is referring to experimenting with combinations of quote unquote modern and traditional techniques. I don't know why we would tie one hand behind our back. I know there's people that are purists about these types of things, but we're definitely not here. I would tend to lean towards traditional techniques, but I'm of the opinion that the universe is going to communicate with you in the way that you entrain your brain to receive the message. And if we've entrained ourselves to both modern and traditional astrology, messages can come through those mediums. I think that really we're just kind of trying to filter out excess noise when we say, well, that's not an appropriate technique. For some people, it's necessary. I totally can understand that. For some people, having one technique that is unambiguous is what they need to hear the message from the divine. That's not the way that I experience the divine, but to each his own. Pluto stations retrograde on the 6th. Okay, so this is Pluto stationing retrograde the 6th of May, switching directions. Something to keep in mind with the Pluto retrograde is we are setting up for an out of bounds Pluto experience from August 11th through December the 10th. Pluto is going to station direct on October the 15th at 3 degrees of Aquarius. And this out of bounds period is really interesting to me because it begins around the new moon solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Leo, and it ends as Saturn stations direct at 7 degrees of Aries. So that in between that period of time is going to be a lot of interesting outcomes. If you're not familiar with the Pluto out of bounds narrative, Pluto out of bounds has been associated with both consolidation of authoritarian power when it's in the northern declination, out of bounds. This is, think of like 30s and 40s, the rise of fascism, the use of atomic power, rise of power of Hitler. The southern declination, out of bounds period for Pluto, has been associated with the returning of power to the collective, revolutions. I don't know if there's a one-to-one on this. I'm thinking of things like the French Revolution. I don't know if there's a Pluto out of bounds period there. If I'm completely sure that that was one of the events around that, but it's something like that, where we have the returning of power to the people. That period of time, August 11th through December the 10th. Now, there are multiple Pluto out of bounds in the southern declination area over the next decade. So this isn't just like a one-time thing. This is like periods where we're going to see the rise of attempts to consolidate authoritarian power and then the people pushing back. The rise of attempts to consolidate technocratic power, the people pushing back. So keep your eyes peeled for that, for the mid-August time. And how does that relate with the Pluto retrograde? It's going to have people asking questions, a lot of questions about abuses of technology, abuses of control of the narrative that we talked about with Aquarius types of things, with the Saturnine ability in Aquarius to repress certain parts of a narrative, to highlight other parts, okay? And with Pluto stationing retrograde, that corruption, I think, could be put into question. And a lot of the things that have moved forward may be starting to be taken back. For those of you who haven't been paying attention to the news today, there is an attempt right now to force through Congress a $140 billion budget reconciliation bill to fund ICE, right? So we've had funding kind of on hold for ICE for a number of months, I guess you could say, because Congress has refused to vote on it, and rightly so. And they recently just funded like TSA and Homeland Security and all these things, but they didn't include ICE in that. And the Republicans are trying to force through a $140 billion bill to fund ICE through a kind of a technicality, I guess you could say, where other Congress people don't have to vote on it, or at least that they have a different type of bar to hurdle to get it to pass. So things like that could potentially be revealed as corruption. If something like that passes, maybe something like that gets taken back, like with that kind of corruption. Maybe there's something where we've had investments in AI technology or surveillance technology that people are like, AI is deeply unpopular right now. I don't know if you've heard the narrative started with this, and as it should be. It is deeply problematic on many levels that I won't reiterate here today, but its environmental impact, its impact on our freedoms and our rights, our privacy, its impact on our cognitive abilities, its impact on wealth equality. It is really problematic in many different ways. So there may be things that have been given that might start to get taken back in that field as well. Rachel says, good practical advice. We'll fill the gas tank up this weekend. Yeah, if you are worried about the pending price challenges, definitely go fill up your gas tank probably before Monday, because I do think that there's probably a lot of questions of what we're doing, and the affordability question is going to come up this week probably pretty intensely. Rachel says, I've not studied Pluto out of bounds before. This is fascinating. Yeah, this was recommended to me. There's a book called Persephone's Revolution. The author is escaping me at the moment. I believe this was shown to me by Devin Malone of Esoteric Butcher. I don't have it in front of me. That's why I'm looking. That's why I'm looking around for the book itself. Persephone's Revolution, though, is the one that I would look for that. Rosie Finn, it's behind me. Rosie Finn, Persephone's Revolution, talks about Pluto out of bounds periods and the pattern that we see in the rise and fall of civilizations and the consolidation of power and the return back to the people. Okay, so that's Pluto retrograde. Just got a couple more things for you, and then we'll wrap for the day. Last quarter moon on the 9th, and this is the square between the Aquarius moon and the Taurus sun. I lost my blurring. There it is, blurring of the background. So the last quarter moons are an opportunity to let go of the qualities that the moon is moving through to achieve the ideals of the sun. So when we have tension between Taurus 2 and Aquarius 2, Taurus 2 is trying to plant seeds and establish foundations. Aquarius 2 is trying to move on from a past situation, move to a different situation, from one shore to another. Think of the Six of Pentacles versus the Six of Swords card, where you see someone being ferried from one shore to another. So to me, this is a last quarter moon that probably is speaking towards releasing some of our restlessness so that we can commit to the things that we want to achieve, to the security that we want to build, right? Yeah, no problem, Rachel. It's a great book. It's a great book. So I think about it in this regard. I have been doing a lot of changing of my landscape that I live in to restore it to native habitat. One of the cool things about that for a Venus and Gemini type of person is the possibilities. I could put a tree here. Ooh, I could put something over here. And as I start to fill up the space, there have been times where I've really hesitated to actually plant the trees that I have purchased or received through some really generous folks, because it will take away the possibility of doing something different, right? I think that's part of this, is to commit to building a strong foundation. Sometimes you have to let go of always being in process or in transition. Sometimes you just have to say, this is what it is, it's good enough, and let's let it grow into its full potential. If we keep trying to jump from one project to another, one shore to another, we can always keep our possibilities open. We neuter our ability to bring something to its full form. And this is me giving myself that advice just as much as anyone else here. So that last quarter moon, think about how you can create stability by releasing attachment to being always in transition. I know there's a lot of people out there that they don't want to commit because it's like, oh, I don't want to commit. I always want to have my possibilities open. Sometimes that's not possible. The sun moves into Taurus 3 on the 10th. A shift into the decan of Taurus that is associated with repairing something that has fallen into decay or disrepair, or fixing something that we've done maybe a little bit too rashly. So there's things to consider with that. Let's see here. Ben says it's a trauma response for me. Yeah, like not wanting to commit and put down the roots. I agree. As Ben, as somebody who grew up with a lot of divorce in my family, with moving around a lot, I think that it's almost like an abandonment fear, right? It's like we're going to abandon the situation before it has a chance to abandon us. I did a lot of soul searching when I was trying to come to terms with why I was hesitant to commit in relationships. It was because oftentimes I would get emotionally invested in a parent, a step parent, and then they would get divorced and they would be gone from my life. And that made it really hard to feel like I was putting down roots. So absolutely good catch there. How do we examine our trauma around being able to commit to something and have roots and put them down? All right. So Sun in Taurus 3, fixing something that's fallen into disrepair. I went into greater detail on that in the month of May forecast, so go check that out if you want a deeper dive into Taurus 3. We're just kind of going through and reviewing this with more context. A lot of these are things we talked about in the astrology of May, but it's nice to see it from a slightly different vantage point when we have more context, either socially in the collective or in our own personal lives. The Sun and Mercury are going to be sextiling Jupiter from the 10th to the 13th. So that's a little window, the 10th to the 13th, of like potentially some positive energy with Jupiter kind of helping to repair things and really getting good ideas for creating stability with the support of Jupiter. And then on the 14th, we have a Mercury cazimi. So this is Mercury at about 24 degrees of Taurus. It's actually 23 if we're going to split hairs. It says 24 on the screen, but we're slightly past the cazimi. This is very close to a fixed star called Capulus and also a fixed star called Algol. It's within 1 degree of Capulus, which is the sword of Perseus, the rashness sword. So we might have to be careful about trying to do things too quickly with this Mercury cazimi, trying to repair something too quickly that has fallen into disrepair. Algol is also a very powerful fixed star for feeling, I don't know, a desire to utilize our strong feminine protective energy to right a wrong, like where we're feeling like we've been wronged or been abused, and feeling that trauma response and that protective response. I guess we have to be careful at this Mercury cazimi, quote unquote, of losing our head in that regard. We want to be in touch with our strong feminine power and energy, but in a way that isn't overcoming us or controlling us. Like, how do we become in control of it, or at least be in alignment with it rather than out of alignment with it, so that it doesn't become destructive? It can very easily become destructive. And that can lead to the new moon in Taurus 3 that is very close and right on the fixed star Algol. So here is the Algol new moon. So another very powerful opportunity to protect ourselves and others, to repair something that has fallen into disrepair, to examine the results of our actions thus far. Taurus 3 is a good kind of springtime place within the solar year to say, what seeds have we planted? Is this working? Do we need to weed the garden? Do we need to shift gears a little bit? Is there blight? Do we need to, I don't know, do we need to spray some insecticidal soap or neem oil on the plants? Are they getting eaten? Things like that. With the Algol part of it, this could also be leading to a little bit of a collective losing of the head on some level, where people are so fed up with the system or so fed up with the actions of corrupt administrations that they're just over it and losing their collective heads. Or it could also be strong feminine energy coming out. I think that one of the parts of Saturn and Aries that I've seen just in the collective zeitgeist is the checking of overly toxic masculinity, of excessive yang. Saturn is a planet that rebalances something that has gone to extremes. It increases that which is lacking and decreases that which is excessive. There has been a really strong movement towards the raising of feminine power and feminine voices. And I think that's for good, right? You might see the ferocity of that expressed with the Algol new moon on the 16th. Nature, if you think of nature as a mother or as a lover, as we've been trying to think about, or as a feminine principle, I personally think it's both. But if you think about it in that regard, it can be extraordinarily ferocious, destructive, but also protective. So we may see some manifestations of that, some kind of the feminine principle strikes back type of experience. I'm kind of here for it. I think that we need a healthy balance between our feminine and masculine sides. We are hopefully unified spirit souls. And when we go to any extreme, I'm a firm believer in the Taoist principle of things will change to their opposite when they go to extremes. So how do we keep things in balance so that there's not this constant, like, shifting of scales? I think that that's probably just what nature is, but there are ways to think to smooth that process out rather than have it be so extreme each time. Rachel says the Cazimian new moon will be conjunct my Mercury. My goodness. Rachel's feminine power will be expressed. Her protective feminine power will be exemplified, and it will be supported. I guess, Rachel, I would say find a healthy outlet for it, right? How can you turn that strong protective energy towards something that can be sustainable, something that can be changing the world in a positive way, rather than letting it completely consume you to the point where it could be self-destructive? I think that's the if we can externalize it, but also contain it. I guess I'm speaking in codes and paradoxes right now, but that's life, right? It's so hard not to speak in those terms. But I think like directing it in the right way, internally and externally, can help you manage that, especially if it's activating a personal place in your chart. All right, so that's the unfolding of all of these placements from this lunation. We got from full moon to new moon. If you want a further explanation of things in May, go check out my Astrology of May broadcast. Lots of good stuff in there. You can even just go back to it during the month and see what's coming in little chunks if you can't consume the whole 2 or 3 hours. I know we go a little long sometimes, but I do have a hexagram for you and an animal to wrap things up today. The hexagram I got for you is some pretty good advice, okay? This is keeping still, hexagram number 52, without any changing lines. I'm going to read to you from Jack Balkin. This is the laws of change. Keeping still translates to the mountain, restraint, keeping quiet, attaining inner peace, endurance, taking one day at a time. This is the advice for this full moon that we're experiencing today and how it's going to unfold over time. The judgment says, keeping still, he keeps his back still so that he no longer feels his body. He goes into his courtyard and does not see his people, but no blame. The Book of Changes teaches that you must make both your activity and your rest in harmony with the needs of the situation and the demands of the time. Success comes not only from moving forward at the right time, but also from remaining still when it is appropriate to do so. The theme of this hexagram is recognizing that the time has come to be still so that you can regain your balance and find peace. The text offers the metaphor of keeping the back still. The back represents the center of the body. Where the back goes, the body goes. So if the back remains still, the body will be still. The back is also the location of the spine. Hence, to make one's back still means to calm one's nerves and thus one's mind. When your mind is calm and your thoughts are orderly, it is as if you no longer feel your body. That is, you no longer feel the pain of demands pressing on you from the outside and the urgency of desires pressing on you from the inside. This is good advice for moving into that algal new moon too, right? When you are angry and distressed, the world looks disordered and confused. But when you are perfectly calm, you see the world with greater clarity. Being still allows you to see beyond the turbulence of life and the petty struggles of the day, and to look more deeply into the nature of things. Beyond the chaos and commotion lie deeper truths. You have recently entered a potentially difficult and trying period. We all have, right? The world seems disordered and confused, absolutely. In part, that is because you have a disorder and confusion within you. We all have that, I think, on some level, or the potential for it. The most important thing for you to do right now is to restore your inner balance and find peace of mind. Do not let the chaos and the striving of the outside world distract you or upset you. There is nothing more that you can do in the present situation. You've done all that you can. All further exertions would only be counterproductive. Because struggling outward will do you no good, you should stop struggling inward as well. Take a deep breath, collect your thoughts, and reflect, just like the moon reflects light back to that sun, right? You will get nowhere if you obsess about your problems. That will only cause your anxiety to build and build until you feel that you must absolutely do something. And then you're more likely to do precisely the wrong thing. And then you're going to have to do more repairing at the new moon in Taurus 3. If you make your decisions based on worry and apprehension, you are likely to misjudge and exaggerate things. But when your mind is still and your emotions are centered, you will make no mistakes. Calm yourself and you will be able to see more deeply into the situation. Then everything will appear in its proper perspective. Okay, so stilling the mind, meditation is really something associated with this hexagram. How do we make our minds clear? How do we turn down the volume of the noise? And not so that we can avoid taking action when the time comes, but so that we can take actions that are well ordered and effective rather than chaotic and diffused. Now, we have an animal here. This is the oyster. This is the best picture I could find for a living oyster with a pearl. So, and I know it's like half of one, but anyway, the oyster, really an animal of the waters that also has sort of some earthy qualities to it, a nice balance between the water and earth of the Taurus sun and the Scorpio moon. So I'm going to read to you from Melissa Alvarez's Animal Frequency. The oyster symbolizes connecting to your inner essence, balance, and peace, right? We have this echoed in the I-Ching. Oysters can make pearls, and it is a specialty of the pearl oyster, not the food oyster, when bits of debris get stuck in the oyster's mantle. It secretes multiple layers of a substance called nacre, the substance it uses to create its shell, to cover the irritant until the pearl is formed. This means that things that bother you, like a grain of sand bothers the oyster, can be turned into something beautiful, right? The transformation of something challenging into something beautiful. It has a talent for creativity, discernment, intuition, resourcefulness, and wisdom. There are challenges of becoming defensive, emotionally imbalanced, and overly sensitive. When oyster appears, it means you might have to shut down and retreat into your shell to protect yourself. You need to keep quiet, filter out the good from the bad, or put a lid on your emotions until the threat has moved on. Oyster can retain toxins within their body, so it's important for you to make sure you're eating healthy and drinking plenty of fluids at this time. It's also important to let go of any negativity that comes your way instead of letting it affect you. Like oyster, you're sensitive to your environment. Take a look around. Is there anything you can change to make your work or living area more positive, energetic, or calming? Rearranging your furniture can change the flow of energy if it feels blocked. This animal can assist you when you're facing difficulties in your life and need to find a place of balance. If you're in a hectic environment, oyster can help you find some peace within the chaos, where you can connect to your own spirituality and inner self. There are treasures buried within you. Once you find and acknowledge them, life flows easily with purpose, and you'll feel more balanced. Oysters are difficult to open, and this teaches you that no outside force can change who you truly are on the inside. I'm going to repeat that. Oyster teaches you that no outside force can change who you truly are on the inside. This is important when we're getting gaslit within an inch of our lives, right? Those forces, they don't have to necessarily change the core of who we are, right? You don't have to give in to peer pressure, but can simply be yourself. It allows you to see what was once hidden. With Oyster as a guide, you'll always see the best in a bad situation and learn from the experience. You're the eye in the middle of the hurricane, calm and filled with light, even though dark storm clouds rage around you. Struggles become victories with Oyster's assistance. You have the strength within to handle anything that comes your way. Oyster can help you find harmony in mind, body, and spirit. That sounds like a wonderful guide for a full moon where we might be feeling a little bit tossed about. So take anything that you're going through right now and surround it with your calmness, surround it with your peace, and turn it into a pearl. Make something beautiful out of that little irritating grate of sand. I think that's a good advice for a lot of things in life. Like, life doesn't always go exactly how we plan it. It isn't always perfect. There are setbacks, there are traumas, there are things that make us sad, things that make us angry, things that are painful. But we can take that and we can turn it into something that resembles wisdom, that resembles beauty. And we can take that pain and trauma and we can use it to alleviate the suffering of others as well. This is how we learn empathy. I think that pearl is not just something beautiful and valuable, but it is a pearl of empathy. And I think that by experiencing that difficulty ourselves, that pearl of empathy is going to help us to give a beautiful gift to others as well. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you today. Kia Ora says, Karen, what's up, joining us from down under. Now the saying, the world is your oyster, makes sense to me. I was told this on my 21st birthday by a fellow Cancerian. The world is your oyster. We're going to experience ups, we're going to experience downs, we're going to experience things that irritate us, but we can make beautiful pearls out of those, friends. All right, so that's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for all of your wonderful comments and for co-creating this beautiful broadcast with me today. Do me a huge favor. Please like the video if you can. That's the easiest thing you can do. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Subscribe to the newsletter if you want to know when I'm going live. And sometimes YouTube isn't always great about alerting people, but if you're on the newsletter, it'll help. And then, yeah, I've got a sale going on, 20% off until Monday now. I extended my sale until Monday. So if you're listening to this over the weekend, you still have some time to sign up for any reading or recording that I offer. 20% off until Monday. Go to spencermichaud.com, visit the store or the book now button. That's what I've got for you. Hang in there. Have a great weekend. You can find me at Spencer Michaud on social media. It's beautiful to hang out with you. Ben says, how our plans and expectations are changed by the great creator is the opportunity to connect in a VP or a more meaningful way with ourselves. Absolutely. As within, so without. As above, so below. It's all connected. Thank you, Javier, for being here today. Default back to kindness, right? It's punch upwards. You can be critical of power, people that are abusing power. Try not to punch downwards towards the vulnerable, towards the people that are already experiencing suffering, whether that's your neighbor or people in your communities. It's okay to have some righteous indignation, but try to make friends with your neighbors in your community and find common ground while also holding people who are abusing power accountable. Those are the balances that we're trying to strike right now. And I think it really does help to default towards kindness. So be kind to yourself, be kind to one another. We'll see you the next time. Have a good one. Peace, friends.